and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's time to Nerd Fight! The ultimate showdown where geek culture collides with unfiltered opinions and passionate debates. I'm your host, Mr. Know-It-All, bringing you the latest and greatest from the world of movies, TV shows, and all things nerdy. But hold on to your warp cores because the real captain of this starship is none other than Salty Trekker. So strap in and get ready for a wild ride because we're going to cover everything that went down at Disney's D23 last weekend. You don't want to miss it. That means only one thing. It's time to fight. Nerd Fights.
Booyah, baby. Really? Really? Did you fall asleep?
No, I'm awake.
That's how good D23 was?
Yeah, I was just recapping in my head all the D23 stuff. No, actually, you know what was really bad was, you know what I did this weekend?
What's that?
I saw Borderlands.
Did you really? You're a liar.
No, I went. Me and the wife went and saw it, and I will tell you that all the hate that it's getting from the usual sources. Oh, it's definitely well deserved. This movie sucks.
It's rough.
It is. My wife and I agreed 100% that this is the worst movie that we've seen this year.
Oh,
by a
so bad.
Yeah. Now, I have not seen Madam Web, so I can't compare it to Madam Web, but I can say that this is the worst film that I've seen, and I've seen pretty much every major summer release. So,
right on.
Back to Furiosa at least.
All right, guys, welcome to Nerd Fights. I'm, of course, one of the hosts, Mr. Know-It-All, and joining me, as always, is the captain of this starship himself, Salty Trekker. So we're going to be going through everything that happened at D23. No, neither of us got an opportunity to go, but we've been online. Now, to avoid any kind of strikes of any kind or whatever, we're not going to be showing any of the bootleg material, but we are going to show a lot of images that did come out, as much as the authorized ones we could find and whatnot.
Right.
Some stuff to talk about. Hopefully you get a chance to talk back in the comments. Please don't hesitate. Go down in the comments. Give us your thoughts. We'd absolutely love to talk about it. And of course, the very last half hour, we have now reserved to just go wild. So the last couple of times we've gone off the rails the last 30 minutes, and we said, you know what? We're going to lean into it. So start dropping questions that I will start starring, and things like that you want us to talk about, or stuff in general you want us to talk about toward the end of this, and I will make sure that we revisit them and take a look at them. But for now, we're going to talk about some D23. What have you heard so far, by the way, before we get into actually the first segment?
What do you mean, what have I heard so far?
Did you get a chance to actually dive deep into the stuff that was going on? Because apparently,
as far as the D23 stuff, you mean?
Oh yeah.
No more than anybody else. I mean, honestly, I felt that D23 this year was very vanilla. I think they played it very safe. And while there were a couple of things that I didn't know were coming, like Incredibles 3, stuff like that, I still wasn't like blown away by anything.
Fair. Fair.
At least of what they've released publicly. And some of the stuff was straight up disappointing. Like, if they're going to talk about some of these projects that are way into production, show us something.
Well, I think part of the problem that Disney is realizing is both on the Marvel and Star Wars front, which are arguably the larger of the properties that they push and promote at these events.
Right.
I feel like the mistake they've been making is by promoting and talking about stuff that ended up not happening. Like the last D23, there were like 4 or 5 major projects that are now just gone. Don't exist. Nobody said anything about them, and it's like we're not going to talk about them. Here, Marvel, same thing. They introduced Blade, Mahershala Ali's Blade, 5 years ago at this point, and now they're just like, shh, let's keep it.
Well, of course, but to Marvel's credit, they actually pointed that out during Deadpool and Wolverine. So,
yeah, no, they did. They really did. They took the opportunity. So, all right,
I'm the only Blade.
No, that's real. Yeah. Okay, so let's actually start and get into this a little bit.
Okay.
So Disney is they have been having D23, I want to say this is like how many years has it been? I think they were doing some sort of a smaller event like this, a version of this. But then a few years back, I think pre-pandemic, they made the decision they were going to begin opting less to go to Comic-Con and really pour the dedication and money into their own event. And then that's when they started changing it from all over the place, all over the world in terms of where they were having it and whatnot. So, this first thing they did was the first run of stuff was on their animation front. You a big animation fan other than the stuff kind of like, obviously, Star Trek?
Oh, I like some Disney animation stuff. And the Pixar, I think, has really reinvigorated animation in the modern stage. If you look at some of the higher quality Pixar stuff,
Right.
they set the standard. Both in animation and
Pixar did, and what did they do? They bought them.
yeah,
So
but
totally.
both in animation and in storytelling.
Right.
And,
No, that's real. That's real.
and something that I think needs to be, and some of the stuff I got a good feeling about, some other stuff not so much. But I do think that the focus right now for these big studios like Disney needs to be on the storytelling. And by the way, they're asking, and I have no idea, why is it D23 and not like D24 since it's 2024?
That's a good question. Why is it called D23? The name pays homage to the exciting journey that began in 1923 when Walt Disney opened his first studio in Hollywood. So that is why. Thank you very much for asking the question.
And Thomas just put that in the chat too.
Now you know, and if knowing's half the battle, you are halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. All right. So, okay, I guess we may as well just jump into the first topic of this thing, which the big one was, I think we should just let it go. It's Frozen. A big Frozen fan? I wasn't, and I'm still kind of not, but I remember, but it has been a major part of my life.
I have not seen Frozen.
Really?
No.
Oh, you've missed nothing.
And I've not seen Frozen 2, obviously.
I hear you.
So the announcement that there's going to be a Frozen 3 to me was like, oh.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, it's the third installment in the hugely successful Frozen franchise, which was grossed $2.76 billion, regardless of whether Frosty or Salty and I rather like it. Frosty. Mm-hmm. That's your new name because of Frozen. I'm calling you Frosty.
Okay.
So they revealed some concept art, which showed Anna and Elsa on horses heading toward a summer. That's the image on the screen.
Yes, the city from the Cloud Minders from Star
Trek
series.
It looks a lot like, if you remember the artwork for the original Sleeping Beauty, it looks a lot like that style, even though this is just concept art.
Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella, one of those classic.
Yeah, at least they're staying close to their like roots in terms of style. Jennifer Lee, she's the chief creative officer over at Walt Disney. She said that she teased Frozen 3 will answer lingering questions from Frozen 2, because apparently there's lore now.
Well, are they going to finally answer whether they're lesbians? Because that was a big thing. I remember.
So there's you joke. There's a rumor going around that Elsa is going to end up marrying one of the other. They're going to meet more of the characters who control the weather.
Okay.
Which is something that was established in the second movie. If you're a Frozen lore person, because I am not. But no, not the Stanley. No, they are not getting married. You're such a dork. I love you, bro. Anyways, no.
Disney's really getting edgy there.
No, for real. Like, can you imagine? Still, it looks like Frozen 4 is also on the hunt, and I'm like, hey guys, shh. Let's go back to what we talked about.
Yeah, just talk about what you're actually doing.
It's like you're going to send our kids into a frenzy over Frozen 3. You don't need to like send them into fits of apoplexy with Frozen 4.
Right.
It's okay. The expected release date is going to be November. There is a quote from Jennifer Lee. She says it will take 2 films to answer all those questions. I'm sorry. I don't know that it took 1 film to answer those. Like, why? I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the Frozen franchise, mainly because my biggest issue with Frozen when it first came out, I remember I sat down. It was my son, my stepson from a previous marriage, and his sister, who's funny enough, his sister, actual half sister from a previous marriage, from my ex-wife's previous marriage, and we all sit down to watch Frozen, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, this looks very classic Disney, and then they start singing. And the
And it's
songs aren't bad,
but
but
more,
they aren't Disney songs.
they're more contemporary.
Very contemporary. I'm like, and I'm sitting here going, this doesn't feel like it just felt incongruous, if you will. Like it was like two things that bashed together. And I'm like, why? So I don't know. It was one of those times where I was like, I don't know that that's the mood they want to actually build on, but it was, whatever. Hey, Benny. And
I never
so
noticed that your initials are KIA. You might want to work on that.
thanks. I appreciate that.
Mm.
The next movie which was interesting, was the sequel to the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
The arguably best Fantastic Four we've ever gotten on film up until this point, hopefully. Which is obviously Incredibles. Incredibles 3 was announced. There's literally nothing to show or talk about. There's a logo. No one really knows. The internet is rife with speculation, as it will do. And the basic gist that has been floating around is the third film in the Incredible series is going to focus on the family of superheroes balancing their personal lives with saving the world, which sounds an awful lot like the last two movies. But then again, I've said similar things about Toy Story.
But you see, now I think Incredibles was one of the best Pixar films, bar none.
Absolutely.
Incredibles 2, it was a significant drop. I think that part of the problem with Incredibles 2 is they tried to focus in on one character instead of the family dynamic, with Mrs. Incredible was basically the focus of the film. And it was harder to get interested in what was going on.
It's fair.
So with Incredibles 3, it's got me this is really gives me mixed feelings, because on the one hand, if they try to, if they try to make it more about family like the first Incredibles, it could be, the best movie of its given year.
Make it about family.
Yeah, but if they make it about, one of the characters, then I'm probably not going to like it as much.
That's fair. The good news for me is they announced Brad Bird's coming back to direct, and Brad Bird is the guy he's been instrumental in really putting Pixar on the map. And he's trying very much. He's tried middlingly to go into live action directing, and it's like, bro, come back, do this thing that you do so well. Stop
and
it.
Stan, as far as your questions, there is no information on the movie yet. All
Not
we know is that it's going to happen.
Like literally in my run sheet, the only thing I could do was put stats, which is Incredible 2 was the highest grossing animated film of all time. Inside Out 2 took the throne. And like, it was just, there's nothing. They gave us a logo. And
Right.
so this picture is even from the second one. I put the part 3 logo over top of the part 2 one that was there.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's not a whole lot to tell about that. But the next one they talked about, and we'll just kind of truck straight through these, was Zootopia 2. Did you ever see Zootopia 1?
Yes, and in fact, really enjoyed Zootopia.
I did too.
And
I was very surprised.
I wanted an entire movie just about that stupid sloth at the DMV. That was my favorite scene was with the sloth. Yeah. And so, of all the things they need to revisit in Zootopia 2, the sloth must be there.
I'm with you. I would really dig that, because I think he's one of the cooler characters for sure.
Yeah. And just the way they animated, like when he smiled in super slow motion and stuff.
Yeah. No.
When they told him the joke, and he's like, ha, ha. It's just like, okay. So yeah, I think Zootopia 2 is probably, of the animation stuff that they released, probably the one that surprised me the most, but also has me the most excited. Because even though Incredibles 3, I think, has potential to be a better film, Zootopia 2 doesn't suffer from it had a mid-sequel.
Agreed. No, I totally agree with that. I liked Zootopia. I thought it was good. They did these series of shorts, which I don't know if you saw it. If you have a Disney Plus subscription, and no, I am not opining for them or trying to shill for them, but definitely giving you the opportunity, go watch it. We didn't know what it was, and we sat down. It's all of the in-betweens. By that I mean, if you remember, Zootopia has a series of scenes and things that happen. These are this is like the 5 minutes or 4 minutes between. So remember, at one point there's this whole big huge accident thing, and the little mouse hamster chick with the fancy rich one was going to the street.
Yeah.
One of them is what she was doing before that.
Okay.
And each of these shorts ends like you could. I almost feel like these shorts were actually scenes that were cut.
Yeah.
And Brad Bird was like, or somebody over there at Pixar was like, these are really good. We need to think of something to use them for later.
Right.
Because they literally fit smack in the middle of the whole thing.
Well, if they're depending on how many of them there are, they're probably cut for runtime. Because
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
you can't have a kids movie 2 hours long.
The cool announcement about it is Ke Kwan, who notably was in Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
He was also in Loki season 2. He's Academy Award winning actor. He is going to be joining the voice cast as Gary the snake. So I think it'll be fun to see what he does with that, because I really like the guy. I think if there's one person who's like, hey, look, remember Hollywood was fun? And I'm like, good for you, sir. Good for you. Way to go.
And yes, Thomas, that's Short Round.
Absolutely. Love Short Round. So then there's another animated feature that's coming up, which is going to be centered around a young boy who's mistaken for an intergalactic ambassador of Earth, and that is Elio. I'm sorry, it's a short log line, but it feels really ham-fisted. I get it, but I almost feel like that's why. I feel like they greenlit it just based on the premise alone. But I feel like this premise almost sounds like several other things we've seen recently. Things that have actually flopped both on streaming and in the movies. And my whole thing is are we really gambling like this? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. It's got the same producer who worked on Coco, a director, a co-writer and co-director, Adrian Molina, who he did Coco, and Coco was massively successful. So I don't know. I know Zoe Saldana is going to be doing a voice, and then some of the other cast members are Jamila Jamil, she voices all kinds of cool stuff, and of course Brad Garrett, who we all love from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Any thoughts about Elio?
Yeah, I agree that like when you like hear about the premise, it's like, okay, so this has been done not just recently, but I mean, how many Disney films are about mistaken identity?
No kidding.
And so and then it just seems like this. I mean, because Pixar has had a couple of misfires recently, and I have a feeling this might be the next one.
And continuing the sequelitis from the previous one before that, because apparently that's all they can do these days.
Yeah.
We're getting Moana 2, which, yay! I know that my kid loved her some Moana, and when she heard they were doing a second one, she was like, "That's awesome!" And I'm a huge fan of Dwayne Johnson, although huge fan of him as a character and as a person, but not as an actor, because I guess he's really rough to work with, and so Hollywood sort of put him in the penalty box for now until he gets it all sorted out.
I'll tell because the power structure has now changed.
I hate you so much. I knew we weren't going to get out of this without hearing a power structure change.
I have not seen the first one, so I put my
quiet as kept. Neither have I.
Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't. It was just There are some things that are too self-indulgent, and this is one of them.
I think it's a little weird though that, and I don't remember. I don't know if they talked about it at D23, but one thing that they have talked about recently is that they're in pre-production for a live-action Moana film, which will also star The Rock in the same character.
I just want to know if they're going to put him like in the fat suit like he wore that for that one movie he did with Kevin Hart. How when he was younger he was like a big guy. They needed to make him like a big, because he's not a big Samoan. He's a muscular Samoan. He's a muscular looking guy.
Right, but he's not. Yeah, he doesn't look like that.
He doesn't look like the guy who plays the Mandalorian, or not Mandalorian, Boba Fett.
Yeah,
he looks like he could be a big boy someday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, I don't know, but it doesn't look bad. It looks
right, but Disney generally does live action of classic Disney films. And it's like now you're doing live action at the same time that you're producing the sequel in animation.
Yeah,
that's just really weird.
It does feel it feels like they've caught up. Mm-hmm. Like if the live action stuff was chasing the animated stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're like, I almost feel like part 2 is like, back off live action version. Give me a minute to breathe. So we'll see. I mean, again, I've seen the clips I've seen from the original movie looked really fun, and I'm sure I probably should watch it. I know that I'm sure my daughter's losing her mind, being like, "Why aren't you watching this yet?" The other thing they did, they have some other singles coming out which are interesting. One is called Hoppers, which is about kind of experimentation on some younger, smaller animals, and I'm sure they, after hijinks and whatnot, they get their revenge. And the other one is now this one I'm actually kind of interested in. So Inside Out and Inside Out 2 now subsequently are huge, massive successes.
Right.
This is called Dream Productions. That's the name of the actual show. Because I guess in the second movie, which I have not seen yet, they introduced the concept, spoilers for those of you playing at home, of she has a dream like film studio in her brain. It's sort of how dreams happen. So this apparently takes place between the first and second movie and is just about her dreams for the future. And I'm like, okay, that
So,
could,
like, the emotions are producing dreams for her.
yeah, but I don't even know to what extent the emotions may directly play a part. I mean, who knows? It could end up being Mystery Science Theater 3000 in her head, in her brain, where
Right.
the emotions are sitting there giving a once in a while offhanded commentary, and you get to just see what her thoughts are for the future. You know what I mean? And maybe they're
Right.
just like, oh, I think we could pull that off. Blah blah blah. Who knows? But
I think it's an interesting idea. I'll definitely check it out when it comes out. Uh, but honestly, I'm not hyped for it. It just sounds like, okay, that's kind of an interesting idea. The other one, the hamster science experiment movie, it's
yeah,
like, I don't think they should have even released anything if all they have is that, like,
yeah, concept
comic
art.
book looking concept art. It's like, give
Yeah,
me something to know what this movie is about.
for real. Well,
Um,
so I feel like most of D23 this year, on top of the stuff you talked about, was about really getting people letting them have an immersive experience. I don't have any images of this, but you can go online and search for it and see. They did all kinds of installations. Installation, for those of you playing at home, is like a pop up of a thing. So they have like a TVA installation where you walk in and it looks like the TVA from Loki and stuff.
right.
They've got and there's like a hologram Miss Minutes who was there. They have a preview of what's going to be the Avengers like a multiverse ride where you get to see like World Conqueror Thanos, which is a character from the comic books,
Hmm.
and apparently what's his nuts came back and actually did he did a voice. He didn't do motion capture for it.
Josh Brolin.
Yeah, he actually voiced him, and I was like, that's kind of fun. So yeah, I mean, they were really going all in the experience, and I think they're because it almost feels like this year is the first genuine. Now there's no more signs for the pandemic year.
Hmm.
All the regional Star Trek conventions are popping back up. The D23 went all in on experiential stuff,
Right.
and it's just been. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to see life trying, or as people on the internet are so quick to say these days, nature is healing. I'm just, no,
Anyway,
for real, no, legit. But yeah, I'm. I don't know, man. I'm not super. I'm with you. I'm not super excited for where the all the stuff is happening when it comes to
right.
D23, the animation side anyway. It was a little lackluster. It didn't suck completely, but it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. Um, if you had your druthers, what would you have Pixar do? I'm just curious.
Well, I like the idea of the Incredibles, um, but the other two things we got from them just seem like they're just out of left field. They don't seem like
Yeah,
they don't feel like Pixar stories. They just feel like random stories that Pixar's just picking up because they need work. And I don't know. I mean, I might look at revamping some classic fables or fairy tales, stuff like that, and doing it in the Pixar style. But what they're doing right now, it just doesn't feel very Pixar-y, except for the Incredibles.
so I got a hot take, and that's
Okay.
I think I think that Disney and them are in a conundrum in that they love Pixar did original stuff. They love
You went
they have
underwater, by
great.
the way.
Sorry.
There you go. You went underwater for a second.
Sorry. They have original stuff they've been doing forever and ever and ever, and now all of a sudden they decided to they're doing everything like everybody else has done, which is they're going sequel. I
Right.
don't think we looked at like 3 are original, and one of them isn't even original; it's a derivative. It's not even a sequel; it's just derivative,
Right.
and it's like,
Yeah,
why?
Disney never was big on sequels until this decade.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Oh yeah, no, and
Yeah.
now they're just doubling down hardcore on everything.
Right.
Now people would argue that the MCU is sequels, but I think that's more like the MCU is a
Yeah,
very
but I'm talking
good
about Disney proper.
TV show,
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. The MCU is episodic in a way that other movies aren't. So I don't really. Yes, they're sequels, but I don't count them as sequels. I count them more like I see them more like episodes, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of said MCU, brings us exactly to that. The next section of this thing, this fun thing, was Marvel. And Marvel introduced us to a whole bunch of really interesting properties. There was several things that we've all been wanting to hear about. Some things that I was like, "Oh, that's where you went with that." And let's go ahead and get into the first one, which was, of course, Ironheart.
Yes.
Um, I
This is one of those properties because Ironheart was supposedly shot and in the can years ago, and
yes,
so
and you can kind of tell
yeah,
because what's his face is in it from who was in I want to say Transformers, but the truth the truth is he was more. I know him better from being in Hamilton, and it's one of those things where when I saw him, I was like, I don't know what it is we're doing. Like
right.
what are we doing? Like what is the actual thing?
And I don't think they know. That's the problem. I think the reason it's taken so long to get Ironheart released is because they probably had to retool it, recut it to try and make it fit into whatever the new narrative is.
So, for those of you playing at home, Ironheart is a Disney Plus series following Riri Williams. She's a young genius who creates an advanced suit of armor, taking up the mantle of Iron Man. She comes from she's definitely a character in the comic book, so this isn't something new and crazy. This isn't a woke thing. She's a character who, now, what I don't like is sort of, I did watch the D20 thing online, and I didn't. They're going a route that I don't feel good about. Not because I don't like the character, but because my question is, it's very much like questions I had about the Acolyte. Like, this is where you went with this?
Right.
So in the piece, for those of you playing at home who didn't watch and didn't see it and haven't, I'm gonna tell you what I saw. She goes to college, and they have the same Yahoo who was at the college when Tony Stark was there, giving everybody a thing in beginning of Civil War. And she doesn't apparently she's at MIT. She doesn't do well or whatever else, so they won't give her the tools she needs to do the thing she wants to do, which is build the armor. And so what does she do? She meets this guy who can use her abilities, her meaning her genius, to steal stuff, and he offers to help her fund building her suit. So she builds a suit with stolen money, and I'm like, you have a black lead, and you have a lot of ethnicity all around her, and you choose to go low-hanging fruit and like this is like it's a Spike Lee movie, like this, they're stealing to make ends because of blah 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 and this and that, and I'm like, it just feels like, one, again, I feel like I've seen this movie, or at least that element of it.
Right.
And in the comics, it was so much more interesting. In the comic books, she pieced together garbage, like whatever she could find, and she built an Iron Man suit.
Which is kind of what we saw in Black Panther.
Yeah, that's true. It's
And that's what I don't understand is because if she was able to piece together the suit from some Wakandan tech that was lying around, which makes sense because Wakandans have the best tech. However, so why does she now need to build the armor again?
Well, not just that, but if you're involved with them, like, I'm sorry, she went through everything we saw in Wakanda Forever. Why doesn't she have any help? Heck, why isn't she in Wakanda?
Like,
right. You don't.
How she should be hanging out with Shuri and learning,
totally.
Learning Wakandan tech.
Shuri should be her mentor.
Right.
and bringing her up in a certain. I'm like, this. It just feels
Right.
really, really. I'm like now. And what sucks is there's a whole bunch of people out there who are like, this is great. It's wonderful. That's right. She's doing whatever, whatever. And I'm like, stop it. You sound dumb.
Right.
Because I'm sorry, we are not that starved. This is to me. This is Tyler Perry does the MCU, and I don't need it. I don't need it. Okay, and I don't because I'm like I'm sorry. The first Black Panther movie. Hang on, I got it. I'm sorry, I have to. The first Black Panther movie was excellent.
Yes.
Left that movie and I rethought my life. Let me explain. I had created comic book characters and wrote stories forever when I was younger. I actually went back into the archives of my life and was going through Dropboxes and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, did I create these characters to be Caucasian because that's those superheroes I knew? Or was there a real, and come to find out the truth is, yeah, some of them I genuinely wanted to be the way they were. I created them. Other ones I was like, you know what? I'm going to rethink this one. It had something to say, said it well, and I was like, this is good. This is really good.
Right.
But no, these yahoos now are like, it's okay. We're gonna give you a girl in the hood. And it's gonna be instead of boys in the hood. And it's gonna be she's gonna steal to make her way because the man's keeping her down, the way Stanley said, and blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, guys, this just sounds sounds old hat.
You're feeding into stereotypes and it's tired storytelling.
And I'm sorry, people are like, well, but we should be able to see our stories. What are you talking about?
It's the same story. We've seen it 100 times.
And not to mention, this is not like I see nothing. There's nothing special about her or this situation as far as I'm concerned. You don't even have to call her Ironheart. This doesn't even have to be in the MCU. Just make some movie about a girl who builds a suit and blah, 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 and she steals to make it work and everything else and whatever. And I'm sure down the road there'll be some whatever. It was so infuriating for me. You know, in the comic books, I love the character and she's got agency and she's intelligent. She didn't have to steal other than she found technology where she could. And what she did was in the comics, she does it in the aftermath of Secret Invasion, because in the comics, Secret Invasion is way better than the crappy show. Right. And what she does is there's places similar to how the first MCU movie, where they were like, there was junk just laying around, an alien or whatever else, and she pieced stuff together. At the time in the comics, Tony Stark is dead, but he has an AI he's imprinted with his mind. So what happens? His AI has been trained to track down misappropriated Iron Man tech, and hers is like Iron Man tech adjacent, because she's that smart. And I thought the character was interesting and it had something to say. And you have Tony's AI who adapts, comes into her suit and is like, oh, hey, this is, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. How did you come up with this? Would you steal my plans or whatever else? And she's like, no, it's common sense. And that impressed him. And you know what? It impressed me too. I was, and to see this version of the character, I'm just disappointed. I'm disappointed by it. That's my take anyway.
No, I'm with you. And I to me, Ironheart, it just comes across as a big meh. I will watch it because it's MCU, and who knows, maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised like I was with Miss Marvel.
Oh, absolutely.
But at the same time, I'm not expecting much from this show.
No, I'm not either. I really am not. So, all right. So that was the cast. They introduced the cast and brought them out at the thing. And then they went into the next one, which was Daredevil Born Again.
Yes.
Daredevil Born Again looks pretty dope.
Yeah.
So what's funny is the Netflix show in its second season, rather, the Netflix Daredevil show, it was an adaptation adjacent version of the Born Again story. Now, there's an actual story in the comic books. That's where you get the scene where Frank Castle's yelling at him about what kind of, you're a half measure, when he's all chained to like this. Right. That moment is straight out of a full page spread in the comics. It was great. So they borrowed heavily from that run. So I'm interested to see if they're going to literally decide, if they're like, we're going to literally adapt this now. We're not going to kind of borrow parts from it. Like, it's that story.
Well, and I'll tell you, this one as far as the Disney Plus stuff, all Disney Plus stuff, Star Wars, MCU, other Disney stuff. This is probably what I'm looking forward to the most.
Yeah, I agree.
And my only real problem with them talking about it was the fact that they're already greenlit season 2. Again, getting too far ahead of themselves.
Yeah, for real.
But I really like the fact that they're bringing back the whole cast. From what little bit that they did show at the convention, it looks like it's going to be as gritty and violent as it was on Netflix.
Which I love
And
the selling point.
yeah, well, the funny because a lot of people were afraid that it was going to be, sure, same guy playing the part, but he was not going to
Sure.
really be Daredevil. He was
Well,
just
after the walk of shame in She-Hulk, people had reason to be scared.
right, and
By
but
the way,
then
to be fair, I actually kind of dug that moment in She-Hulk because I love seeing different sides of characters. Even if it felt a little incongruous with his
Right.
character, it was still pretty funny. But also, I'm an old school fan of the yellow and red. I'm sorry, continue.
Well, no, it's all right. So I'm really looking forward to this. Can't wait to see Vincent D'Onofrio and Charlie Cox trading barbs again.
I agree.
And I mean, and the funny thing about the Daredevil series is, as great as the action was, some of the best stuff was just dialogue. It was
Agreed.
scenes like the one you were talking about, where Daredevil's chained to a chimney, and they spend an entire episode just him and Punisher talking philosophy. And that was a great episode.
Absolutely.
And so, but the fact that they're bringing back the whole cast, and that it feels like this is a continuation of the same Daredevil we saw
Right.
on Netflix.
Yeah,
Plus,
I'm
bringing
excited for
back
it.
Punisher, so that's a good thing too.
No, right on. I'm also hoping. I'm hoping that we get to see, because I know that what's her face. I think we're gonna get a Jessica Jones cameo because I guess on her Instagram, like a couple months back, the actress who played Jessica Jones said that, or she wore a T-shirt or something from somehow she did something that
From the
implied.
comics, so yeah.
Yeah, so everybody's like, oh yeah, she's gonna be.
I'd like to
have a
see
guest.
a Luke Cage episode as well.
Melfi Sky said, brought up that Muse is going to be the villain, or
Yes.
one of them, if not the major villain. Because my understanding is Kingpin's actually the villain, but I think Kingpin probably sends Muse after him. And apparently, in the comics, Muse is crazy. Like
I
Muse
don't know
is
anything about Muse, so
okay. Short version: Muse is an insane person, and like apparently, in the how would I describe it best? Apparently, Daredevil can like sense the crazy, and it's like a mist of some sort around, almost like Pigpen. It blurs and obscure. The crazy is so coming off of him like a miasma. It blurs the lines of everything. Like so Daredevil
it's
has a
harder
hard
for him
time
to see
facing-
him.
Sorry.
So it's harder for him to draw a bead on him. Then,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, which I think will be interesting. It'll be see anytime you limit Daredevil's abilities, I find it interesting.
Right.
I feel like that's a fun place to try to go with the character because his literal power is to break the rules of being quote unquote disabled.
Right.
And which I love that. And so especially because it's the classic, oh, you got hit by a car, a kid, blah blah blah, with chemicals in his eyes. It's such a trope of Marvel, but it works, and I do dig it. And of course, the next one. Now, this one we're going to sit on for a minute. Is amazing. Agatha all along.
So this one, I tell you, I was a little surprised in that it looks like what they're trying to do is bring in classic witches from different stories. Because if you look carefully, you do see what looks like the Wicked Witch of the West from Wizard of Oz. They're following a yellow brick road.
Yeah.
She's got this little team of witches that's working with Agatha to help her get her abilities back.
Yeah, and I mean, the trailer does make it look very clearly like they're going to be she's going to be sacrificing them. And of course, I feel like the moral of the story is the friends we made along the way.
Yeah.
And so and what's funny is I don't necessarily know that I love the moments, the beats in the because we've seen the most recent trailer, and there's a singing element which I thought was interesting. And because they all come out in at D23, they all came out, the actual cast in their purple hooded things as a coven singing the song, a song, not the Agatha All Along song, but another song from the Witch's Road, I believe is the name of the song.
Right.
And it's it's an interesting premise. I don't think that our Aubrey Plaza is playing who we think she is. I don't know if Stanley, if it's a full musical or not. He asked if it's a musical, but I think there will be musical elements for sure, which you kind of have to do, considering this is the Wanda adjacent, WandaVision adjacent series. So
and who knows? We may see Wanda in it. So
I don't know that we're going to see her. I think we're going to get well, obviously we'll get flashbacks and stuff because they've already kind of implied that. I also don't know what version of her this is, because they say that her body was found after her fight on Wundagore and Multiverse of Madness, but I don't. That happened. That all happened between the panels. That happened in the white space, because I never saw that, and she wasn't wearing jeans and stuff at that point. So I'm almost curious. See, the problem with the multiverse nonsense is that now I don't trust where we are. I think anything can be fake, anything can be, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Now, the one thing I'll say, and this is where I'm a little torn on the whole Agatha thing in the MCU, is that Agatha in the comic books was not evil. And
I think it's subject to.
She was Franklin Richards' babysitter. Come on.
Well, yeah, but she, yeah.
And this does not feel like that character.
Although, except for the hair, I fully believe by the end of this she's going to have white hair, because this is the outfit.
Yeah, but all that being said, I love her cackle.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
She can play up the witch thing really well. It's just that doesn't feel like Agatha to me. It just feels like a witch. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with her. It's not the biggest anticipation that I have, but I'm definitely looking forward to it. And it's actually just a few weeks away.
Oh my gosh, I know. And it's going to be, and I will be definitely, Mrs. Know-It-All and I are going to be reviewing them together on my channel. So by all means, please tune in. And then I'd love to talk about it here as well.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it on this channel.
Greater depth.
I shouldn't say this channel. We're on like 5 different channels, but this show.
No, it's all good, man. I think that it's cool. I know that the premise I know is one that someone has to go get a thing, and she gets people they puts together people's help, and it's the most original idea I was spin on this information stuff they've got that I've seen from the MCU in a minute.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, especially because she did a really good job in WandaVision.
Yeah.
And I really do love Catherine Hahn, and I love seeing her get an opportunity to really show out lately and really start growing out of the SNL, growing out of that world.
And I thought the musical number they did on stage was pretty impressive.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is going on here? But it's not bad.
I mean, granted, it's hard to compete with the power of one, the power of two, the power of many, but I think they managed to pull it off.
You're a bad man. You're a bad man. The Road. Okay. This is Mrs. Know-It-All, who actually has quite an affinity to this subject matter. So the Road is the knowledge of what the witches know. That's why they are different types, I believe. She goes, I can't wait. Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be one of those, if you've ever gotten a chance to see my Fall of the House of Usher moments video, which Mrs. Know-It-All was majorly a part of. Everybody loved her interactions on that because she knew so much. This is like that. Right. She knows so much. So please, if you get an opportunity, come watch her do her thing on our show, and then I'll see if I can rope her into.
And yes, that's true, Tom. She did kill
one or two with us. And I think that'd be fun. I think she'll have a good time being able to kind of talk with us, and we can set some cool things up. But it's a fun opportunity. It's very Doctor Strange adjacent, which apparently adjacent's my new word tonight.
You're saying adjacent a lot tonight.
I am, because everything seems, they're not sequels. They're like tangentially connected. Yeah. Like you've got the sorcery with Doctor Strange, and now you have actual witchcraft, because remember, Wanda's not an actual witch. Wanda is a mutant who can do witchy things because she's a Nexus being. Because she doesn't need spells. She just does it.
Right. She can alter reality.
Right. Whereas Agatha and all of her coven group, brood, whatever, are going to be exactly that. So I'm interested to see sort of the direction they go in with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before we move on?
No. But I think we covered it pretty well. I think it's a definite piques my interest kind of show.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. All right, so the next thing, and I'm waiting before I show the picture. Everyone's like, they did a teaser. They did a teaser. They did not. They talked about the Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
and what they did was they had the cast on a Zoom call. The cast is in London filming.
Right.
And what I did love, and that's why I'm ready for now, I'll show the picture, is even though, wrong picture, sorry. Even though these, everyone's like, they're like, oh, they're on the side or whatever else, I have the feeling this is them more or less in character. Because if you notice, Pedro Pascal is very clean shaven except for that mustache. His hair looks very nicely set, and you see like, everybody's, and then of course you see this early permutation which sent the internet into a tizzy of Johnny Storm's version of a 4 outfit.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that looks.
The big thing here, because I know some people have been criticizing the outfit. I will say this: number one, the Fantastic Four over the years have worn a lot of different uniforms, and this is accurate to a couple of them.
I agree.
Number two, and I think more importantly, is if you look carefully, and I don't know if you can zoom in at all, but if you look carefully, like on Johnny's arms, you can see little dots. And so, like, if you look at his shoulder in between him and Sue, you can see a little black dot right there. And in one of the stills that I've seen, there are dots on both his arms going up and down the arm. Yeah, so, and you can also see a dot on the white above the number 4.
Yeah.
And so what are these dots? Now, they could be markers for visual effects stuff, and this is what I tend to think, because Disney productions in general have been trying to go towards more practical type effects. They could be high power LEDs to give off a glow like he's on fire.
Ooh, so you get some practical light in that?
Right, so you get some lighting built in, and then the visual effects team adds the flame.
Totally, which is great. I mean, my wife and I love watching Corridor Crew. That's how you do it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And so that's what I'm thinking that we're looking at here. And as such, the other part of it is that if this is a costume specifically for Johnny to be on fire in, then this may not be what the actual costume looks like. This is what it looks like to get the best lighting for the flame.
Oh, absolutely. I'm with you.
Yeah.
People remember. People don't understand, or don't remember rather.
Yeah.
In Avengers Endgame, when their time travel suits weren't like finalized until like months before the thing came out.
Right.
So so CGI was being built for it and this and that. Like they've been long since putting people in CGI outfits.
Right.
So, and if nothing else, this could also be, I mean, it could also be very much like James. So James Gunn wanted a very practical Superman suit. Obviously, I do believe they're going to tweak bits of it, but I think overall what you're seeing of the James Gunn Superman is what we're going to end up looking at. Right. I think likewise with this. I do think that in a lot of ways, this Johnny Storm this suit's representative of what they're going to be dealing with, and it's probably one of maybe a couple of different suits that we'll end up getting, if not in their movie overall in their run.
Right.
Like, because I know everyone's looking forward to seeing see if they end up getting the Future Foundation outfit, the one with that weird like hexagonal thing on the chest, right, and whatnot. And I was like, maybe
not a big fan of the Future Foundation stuff, to be honest. I prefer just the classic Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, we are definitely past the days of Green Lantern level CGI costumes.
I agree.
So at least when it comes to Marvel productions, they know how to do it, because there are times, like I remember I saw a thing with with Jon Favreau, and he was talking about when he was making the first Iron Man film, and they had a practical, the Mark II, the silver one, they had a fully practical version, and then they were working on making a CGI version.
Right.
And they kept showing him like dailies of the two of them side by side, and trying to do comparisons and stuff. And he knew that they did it good enough when he mistook the CGI one for the practical. and one thing that people don't realize is that 99% of Iron Man is CGI.
Oh,
and
totally. That's one of the reasons
and
why
so
he's got no problem.
yeah,
Or they're gonna just show his face only
yeah,
in the heads up display setup, and I'm like,
yeah.
which they invented. Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. All right, so the next thing that they discussed at D23, which again was this last weekend that passed, was Star Wars. And the Star Wars of it all has quite a few things that are coming out that are bigger things. So it's not, there isn't like a whole lot of stuff, but there's like the ones they have are coming out are very, very big. And for sure, those of you who, are you familiar with Skeleton Crew?
Sadly, yes, I am.
So Skeleton Crew, um, the one thing I did realize after watching everything and really kind of understanding what they were at their presentation, we mistakenly as Star Trek fans were like, "Oh, it's the premise of Prodigy." Yes and no, it isn't. But what it is, it
Well, they're
feels
not slaves, but they are a bunch of kids that find a starship.
they find a starship. They're not necessarily trying to escape a thing. They accidentally set
Right.
it off. It's like Lost in Space meets almost any 80s or early 90s sci-fi kids movie. I don't mean kids for kids. I mean movies that like Spielberg used to do that has kids in it.
Right.
So yeah, that was and I the scenes when you see some of the shots that they're showing from it, it does have a very interesting take. They've been calling this like Star Wars suburbia
Yes.
because it literally looks like it could be any town USA.
It really does, which is something that I don't like.
I hear
Uh,
you. But look at
I
it, like look at this scene. Doesn't this feel very Spielberg? Like they're going for a look for
right.
sure.
I see that, and I kind of get what they're trying to do, but at the same time, I don't want to see this. I'm like not. I'm not like, ooh, you know what Star Wars needs is some kids running around
No, what it needs is
on zany.
multicolored Vespas.
Yeah, ugh. But this is basically the Star Wars that I don't want, but I hope is good.
Can I tell you? This feels very Return to Endor coded.
Yes.
Like I feel like the little remember the blonde kid with the headband? I
Hmm.
feel like he would be perfect right alongside these kids.
Yeah. Hey,
Like
if when you saw the Phantom Menace, you really liked the scenes with Annie and his little buddies. When hey Annie, what's going on? If that was your jam, then you're gonna love this show.
and I got a show for you.
Yeah.
No,
Uh,
my thing is so anytime the internet raises goes up in arms, I immediately get on the other side of the track just because I tend to not trust the mob,
right.
the mob mentality, not the gangsters, and I feel like we've seen all different kinds of places. We've seen super city planets, we've seen forest worlds and desert worlds and water worlds and all kinds of stuff, and I feel like why wouldn't or couldn't there be a space suburbia? Now I feel like James Gunn already did it with Guardians of the Galaxy 3,
Hmm.
and I feel like Thomas Potts said that Battle for Endor. Why does no one like Battle for
Because we were
Endor?
both clicking on it at the same
Oh,
time.
are we? Because we both trying to make it happen. Because
Yeah.
it's a great comment. Battle for Endor is an epic movie. I do own both those movies, by the way. Because to me, that's the completionist in me. But also, I saw them at a very particular point when I was a kid, and they've stayed with me. That's like the old Droids cartoon. That stayed
Uh,
with me too. It's horrible, but they got the original voice actor, what's his name, to be C-3PO.
Anthony Daniels. Yeah.
Yeah, they got him to actually, and that was brilliant. And for kids, it was it was. I think it played at the same time as like oh my god, Kid Video and Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, and
Right.
I'm dating the hell out of myself right now. But yeah, no, those are excellent. Suburb World, yes, Stanley, I do believe it is definitely going to be Suburb World.
Yeah.
And then of course you get Jude Law, who is. I feel like if the trailer was this gung ho to be like the kids are like he's a Jedi because he moves stuff with the Force, I'm immediately seeing him as a bad guy.
You're
I
right.
have
He's
no way,
going to be
shape, or form-
he's a Sith.
yeah, I have no way, shape, or form believe he is a good guy at all.
Right.
I think he's, especially after you saw him in Captain Marvel, you saw him in any number of things. Like he's going through his villain phase right now as an actor.
Right.
He's
Well,
playing-
look at that shot. He looks evil.
he's just like, "Oh, what's going on there, kids?
You know, it's like Ant-Man in Avengers Endgame. It's like, you didn't know they were bad guys? Look at them.
No,
You know?
how could you not tell? He's like, I
Yeah.
can tell. That's awesome. Yeah. I think I'm gonna be okay watching this. I also feel like there's what did we say beforehand? Before the even started the show, there's very little goodwill left when it comes to Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
They have really exhausted a lot of it, and I feel like it's one of those things that if we don't figure out what we're trying to do ahead of time, because this comes from the same era and was greenlit right around the same time Acolyte was greenlit.
Right.
I do not trust anything I'm seeing.
No.
Because I thought the Acolyte trailer was cool and looked neat. And then all of a sudden it vomited up on our screens what it ended up being. And I've made no bones about not liking the Acolyte. Please, by all means, you can look at my channel. You can look at the NERDFIGHTS I've been on here about it. Okay. So same thing. I'm like, I'm looking at this and I'm literally like, I don't know. Like, I just feels I don't trust it.
And I would say the same thing about the other Star Wars projects they talked about too.
Okay.
So I don't know which one's next on your list.
The very next one is, of course, the actual one that I'm looking forward to, Andor season 2. So the pandemic did several things, and us having to recover from certain stuff, and Disney's glut of content also causing the real back. Because if you remember, they were originally talking about doing 3 seasons, and that the end of the third one, it would butt right up to Rogue One. That's still going to be the case, but now they're only doing 2 seasons. And there's going to be some time jumps in the second season, which I'm fine with. My wife and I we're in the minority of fans who loved who genuinely loved Andor, and so I loved the story they were telling. I love the perspective they were telling it from. I love that we got to really see what I felt is like the groundswell beginning of the uprising to become a rebellion, but we also got to see the humans behind the nefariousness of the because the Empire has always been for movies and whatnot. It's always been just the stormtroopers, guys who can't shoot in white outfits, and you don't ever see their faces. And so to see, I just knocked my glasses off. That was awesome. Yes. And to see the people behind it who were actually people, I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting, And so because you got to figure. There were people who worked in the clerk's office in Germany, not in Germany before the Nazis took over. And then they were like, here, put this uniform on. And you're like, okay, I'm just a clerk and filing papers, but sure. Like there were people who rolled until finally you realize what's going down. And you're like, oh my God,
Right.
Thank you, Stanley. Very clearly, the Empire did nothing wrong.
Well, and that's my problem with Andor season 1 is that Andor season 1 absolutely makes the case that the Empire did nothing wrong. And I will fight on that hill all day long because.
But I don't think it. I see. But you and I misread that completely, and that might be worth. That might be a fair point at some point.
Well, but so hear me out here for a
second.
Go
for it.
Okay. At the beginning of Andor season 1, people are generally prosperous. People have freedom. They can take whatever career they want. They can move from planet to planet. Yes, there's nothing that shows that people were restricted in any way. It's not until
different shows, but
it's not until a group of terrorists intentionally provoke the Empire into declaring martial law that people start to have their freedoms curtailed. And the reason they have their freedoms curtailed is, again, because of these evil terrorists who are directly attempting to just turn this horrific act of mass murder into a recruitment tool.
So I think we saw different shows. Here's why. I very clearly and distinctly saw in the very beginning Cassian's family his life, his neighborhood, all those people, they were not free. They were living in a continually tighter and tighter and tighter circumstance. And little by little, the empire that had just rolled in and that everybody had initially been like, hey, whatever, sure, of course. Oh, the Jedi were bad. All right, whatever.
You are filling in the blanks, my friend. There's
I don't know
nothing
what you're
there.
talking about. I'm watching the show. And when I'm watching the show,
That's not
they're literally-
there.
Man, they're literally.
If that were true, Andor would not have been able to go from planet to planet at the beginning of the show
No, but
before
that's
he
the
even got.
vestiges of the old way. What Andor is the transition from what was left. Because remember, just after Andor, we get to A New Hope, and it's not long until literally dude walks in and says, "Well, he's now finally abolished the Senate and blah blah blah."
Yes, but
And
you're talking. But you see, here's the problem. You're talking about what will happen, as if that was it. That was unavoidable at the time of the beginning of Andor. We don't know that because, and the interesting thing, and granted, I know that I'm not a big Palpatine defender, even though Thomas is, but. If you listen carefully to the dialogue from Palpatine and Anakin in the prequels and even to a limited extent in the original trilogy, what the Sith want is not oppression. What they want is peace and order. And so, and even like if you look at Palpatine in Episode 3, is like, we'll destroy the Jedi and then we'll have peace.
So, I hate to break it to you, that was also Hitler's argument too. Hitler's argument was,
But we're not talking about Hitler. We're talking about.
But that's the allegory. The Empire is always compared to from George Lucas's own mouth. It's always been about, hey, that's who they represent. Well, guess what?
But in Andor, we find out that the only reason they clamped down on people was because of terrorist attacks. And let's be real. Let's say if when 9/11 happened,
okay,
if a couple of days later a massive terrorist attack happened somewhere else, and then a few days after that another terrorist attack, what do you think the federal government would do? Do you think that they wouldn't suddenly put a lot of restrictions on things like travel and stuff like that to try?
Have you been to the TSA?
I know, but even as it is, travel has become more restricted. Sure. But imagine what would happen if the attacks continued.
Sure. Well, and again, remember, dude said, what's his face? Dr. Selvig, as Thomas points out, he said flat out, he's pushing on purpose. The purpose of him and several other people like him was to purposely instigate the Empire to reveal its true nature.
But the problem
nature.
Is, hold on. So do you think the United States is the Empire?
I need to understand where you're making that comparison because I've said nothing.
Because I just said if you had multiple terrorists.
No, but it's the arm. No, but you know what? But you know what did happen the same time they created the TSA for our safety and whatnot? We're now being spied on, and we welcomed it because we wanted
exactly. But the United States was not evil.
Hey, we just got it real quick. You got a super chat.
It was a subscription, actually.
Thank you. Good, thank
you.
You told me to tell you when they come in because you may not see
I know,
it.
but it's in tiny little print on my screen, but I can see
you.
at least enough of it was a subscription. Thank you. But the problem is that you're making the case for me without even thinking about it because
stop it.
No, you absolutely are. Because the United States went from being the shining city on a hill, as Reagan called it, into the NSA spying on everything you do, the TSA restricting your travel. Now you need a passport just to go to Canada, and so all which you didn't need before 9/11.
No, that's not us.
Yeah, but but all these restrictions put on, and imagine if it had been a more devastating attack like what we saw in Andor, like an actual attack on a United States military installation on U.S. soil. It would have, and it was a successful one.
I feel like you keep making these comparisons to our real life when the only comparisons that I've ever made, allegorically speaking, is that when George Lucas created Star Wars, he modeled the Empire off of Nazi Germany and its rise. He now clearly did it on a much bigger, grander scale. So I'm not talking about America. You can make that comparison all you want. I'm not making that comparison.
Right, but my point is not my point is though that the analogy with Germany breaks down because Germany had a clear objective and was trying to push the oppressive stuff before anybody started opposing it. The United States didn't like try to force Germany into martial law in order to reveal how evil they were.
Of course, no, that's where you're now getting to. Now you're into creative storytelling. It's Robin Hood. It's Robin Hood and all this other stuff. Who, if you read the original,
but it's Robin Hood robbing from the rich when the rich didn't do anything.
If you watch
at that
the
point,
original story of Robin Hood, the original story of Robin Hood in that book, in the story, he's attacking noble people in order to because the sheriff has locked himself in and won't come out.
But these guys aren't. There's nobody.
Get his title back. All I'm trying to say is like, though, that's not so. Again, it's a valid comparison to a point. These guys are trying to instigate the Empire to reveal its true nature, the same true nature that we saw in Revenge of the Sith.
Or the Empire became an evil empire because of the attacks. Because in Revenge of the Sith,
Robin Hood is a murderer.
In Revenge of the Sith, the Emperor's entire plan was not against the people; it was against the Jedi.
Why?
Because he thought that the Jedi were an evil, dogmatic organization, religious zealot organization.
That's not at all. If you actually, no, not at all. What he thought was the only people who could potentially challenge anything at any point, he had to take them out first, because by the time they really discovered he was the one going on. Already the infrastructure was in place to oppose and bring them down. He had to take them out first. It's the oldest grudge.
Well, the interesting thing, though, is that he was right. The Jedi did try to take over. Didn't they?
No.
Oh, really? So Mace Windu didn't bring a brute squad to the offices of the Emperor.
No, Mace Windu upheld the law of the Constitution that they were dealing with because it said
Palpatine was given special powers legally. Palpatine was given.
The emergency was over. He had to give it up. He said he refused. Then they were like, "Well, then we got to go and take him out. It's done." And
actually, he didn't say he refused. Go back and look at that scene, because Mace Windu just shows up and he goes, "Master Windu, you're here sooner than I expected." And Windu just says, "You're under arrest." He doesn't say, "Hey, the emergency's over. You need to surrender your powers."
You want to get into a semantic argument with me over purpose and intention, and at the end of the day, the story lays out exactly what's there.
You cannot prove that the Emperor's motives were malevolent, except for against the Jedi.
Exactly. That's enough. Who murders indiscriminately?
Wait. So then the Jedi having a vendetta against the Sith is
that's
okay.
Right, you love the Acolyte clearly because that's the story they're telling. Because that's ridiculous. That idea, the Jedi were literally the only people holding things in terms of the guardians of peace and all that stuff. That's true. Like that's who they were. He wanted to kill them because one, he's a Sith, and that's what they do. Because they want to do their version of things. But at the end of the day, they were still like there was always nefarious purposes. To say otherwise, you're just bending the story because you want to, not because there's anything actually factually about that. It's 100%. They were the worst. Not the Jedi, but the Palpatine and what they were doing. He literally brought an army and had them programmed to all execute the Jedi.
Yeah, the Jedi, not the people. He saw the Jedi as an enemy of the state.
That's that. Now that is a hardcore semantic argument.
He did. Now who's saying you want to say you're saying that he just the Jedi were the only people that could stop him. It's because he knew the Jedi would try to stop him from being the efficient ruler that he wanted to be.
And actually, the Jedi Master. So Thomas says a Jedi Master wanted to kill somebody without a trial. How very Jedi. Actually. He wanted to kill a Sith who had undermined the.
Is a Sith not a person?
He is a Sith. No, they're not. They're
Sith. So now you're dehumanizing him because of his religion.
I love the fact that now you're making specious arguments just for the sake of specious arguments.
No,
You're not even having the fight anymore. I think that means
doesn't
I
a
won.
Sith have the same rights as anybody else?
I think that means I won, bro. And actually,
No.
they don't because they were banned. When the Sith were defeated a millennia ago, they were actually banned and made illegal. They weren't allowed to ever exist, or they're almost like dark elves in fantasy. They were pushed out of the galaxy, and that's why they had to hide because it was illegal. After they had an empire that spanned almost as long as the Republic was in place, and the uprising then of whatever Jedi and whatever else fought to save the quote unquote galaxy and restore peace to it. At that point, they made them illegal. Now, mind you, that's extra canonical and has never been addressed in movies.
I just put a poll in the channel. We'll let the people decide here.
Oh, stop it.
Did the Empire do anything wrong? Yes, no, or don't know. So we'll see what we get.
I love that you go. Did they do anything wrong? Because that's a broad. I'm sorry. I think in Andor, we show they imprison people wrongly and then don't actually ever tend to release them while they force them into slave labor. Whether they die or not is inconsequential. So I would have to say right there, the answer is yes. They did something wrong.
So,
he goes, so.
No, I just said so. We'll see. That's what
I hear you. No,
right now. It's actually tied up at 50-50. So,
so the other thing that was talked about when it came to Andor was the
actually 50-25.
Ben Mendelsohn will be returning for season 2 as Krennic, and most likely we'll see the very beginnings of that storyline from Rogue One.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you like, he's one of the coolest, most petulant characters I've ever seen in the Rogue One movie, and because he's got a purpose and a point. But I wonder if they're going to bring Dude back because I can see him enlisting. I can't remember his name right now. The guy who plays Hannibal. What is his name?
Mads Mikkelsen.
Thank you. I wonder if they're going to bring him back as an earlier version of his character from Rogue One. Maybe even like Ben Mendelsohn discovers him or mentions because in essence, at the end of this season 2, they're supposed to butt right up to Rogue One. Like literally, Cassian is going to end up going to that there's a meeting, if you remember in the movie, the one where he killed the guy in the streets and the whole thing to avoid the stormtroopers and whatnot. That is supposed to be where he's headed at the very end of season 2. So I do love when things do that kind of nonsense where they actually come full circle and give you their stuff.
So it looks like
storylines
people are done voting.
That's the purpose of a prequel, in my opinion.
Yeah, the poll has stopped as far as people voting, so I'm going to call it here. Did the Empire do anything wrong? Yes, 29%. No, 43%. Don't know, tied with yes at 29%.
So technically, by default, no loses.
No wins.
There's more people who don't agree with it, even if they don't have a.
Wow. Well, there's more people that don't agree with yes.
Right on. The other. We're gonna get K2SO as well with Alan Tudyk.
Yeah.
Who's gonna be doing that character? I actually dug K2SO. Especially the way he went out. I thought he went out like a boss.
I thought K2SO was probably the best character in Rogue One.
Yeah, he was such a cool. I liked him.
I'm not the biggest fan of Rogue One, but I did like K2SO in it.
Right on. I like a lot of what they did in terms of I love seeing that beach fight was something was very new that I thought was so cool. It was very Normandy-esque in terms of a visual that representation of something. I did like I thought that I did think it was really ham-fisted, the whole shield thing. I was waiting for them to roll up from the Spaceball spaceship and transform into the maid to suck the air out of the shield. That's what I was, because it just felt like it was really I don't know. But I thought it was interesting. And then of course, obviously, Diego Luna is super excited for what is being put forward in the whole thing. He says the second part will follow Cassian over the period of 4 years as he grows into the hero we see make the ultimate sacrifice in Rogue One.
Oh, you mean the murderer?
No, he totally is. No, you get nothing.
I'm sorry, he is nobody's hero. He is he's
a
coward and a murderer.
Okay, I disagree and agree. Here's why. on its face, I agree on concept. But when he has the conversation with what's her face in Rogue One, and he establishes we all joined this for a specific reason, and he's been fighting against the since he was a child, and all of a sudden he kept saying, "I got to do this one thing. I do this one thing." It's the thought process that, unfortunately, though it ignited the fire that became the rebellion, ended up it itself had to die. It's the one Dr. Selvig says. I say his name Selvig. I don't remember the character's name from Andor season 1, but it's where he basically says, "I'm doing all this terrible stuff for a day I'm never going to see."
But you see, my problem is that they're trying with Rogue One and with Andor, they're trying to show the dirty underbelly of the rebellion. And I don't want there to be a dirty underbelly of the rebellion. I want the rebels to be heroes and the Empire to be villains. But they're taking that away with these shows. I don't know.
See, I think Acolyte did that to its core. But I feel like this did.
Well, I think that's almost all the modern Star Wars stuff, except for the Mandalorian stuff, has been doing that.
I'm sure you've read.
And even the Mandalorian does it to a certain extent.
There are people documented who did horrific things in World War II. I'm
not looking for realism with space wizards and laser swords.
I'm going somewhere with this. I'm not trying to make that comparison. I'm just using that. I'm using that to you, setting up my thought process.
I understand.
They knew in the moment, this shouldn't have to be what is. Mm-hmm. The difference was a diametrically more evil force. So you almost it's almost like a controlled burn. We have to set fire here to avoid the inferno that's raging toward us. I feel, please understand when I tell you, I feel where you're coming from in that you don't want that level of realism. I get it. But I feel like it validates how hardline everyone is after. When they're like, we have to be better. The thing is, they would never have gotten the opportunity to be better if there weren't a few people willing to do some really nasty, dirty stuff to draw a line. Because the Empire to that point was a machine. It was a machine rolling, and it was rolling over everyone. Now, I do think it's foolish I will agree with you, in Andor, they show them to be very inept. Now, mind you, that's a trope of Star Wars because you have the stormtroopers can't aim nonsense. But I feel like at the end of the day, they were a machine of some kind who was just, didn't matter who got in their way. And they were only nice until they didn't have to be anymore. And so it's.
I think where fundamental disagreement is like what you just said. They're only nice until they didn't have to be. I say they were nice until they were forced not to be.
Oh, ABJ, I love you. ABJ made a great point. Andor's show was not very much a dirty underbelly. It was French resistance level honorable.
But you see, I'm sorry, but when Andor straight up murders people, like the first thing Andor does is murder people, and you don't remember the two people he killed when?
No, of course, absolutely do, absolutely do. And the guy in the alley in Rogue One, absolutely.
Yeah, and so. And especially the guy in the alley in Rogue One, the heroic thing to do would be like, I'm not leaving you behind, and either try to carry him up the wall or stand and fight the stormtroopers and then find another way out or whatever. That's the more Star Wars-y thing to do. Not to like, okay, well, you might talk, so later, I'm going to off you and then I'm going to get away.
Well, the thing is, I feel like...
And ABJ, the first guy in Andor, the first guy was an accident. The second guy wasn't.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I also, but again, I do. It's funny that is I couldn't put a word to it, but I like that analogy because like Les Miserables is very very much that. It's about that. It's a story of this French resistance that had to do certain things in order to even get to a place where they could have it's like all the people today here in the U.S. Mm-hmm. Everybody who gets to talk crap about freedom of speech and blah 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 and hate speech and this other thing, they only get to do that because because of all the things they hate. You only get to open your mouth because of all the stuff that you're espousing that you don't like. Right. If this stuff didn't exist, you would never be able to do that.
But so again, this is Star Wars, not the French Revolution.
I understand. However, to sit here and act like, it's a human story. Even fantasy is based in a human story. Good and evil are about that.
But the
They're
problem
about
is that what
we
they're
have
trying
to.
to do is saying you have to do evil in order to be good.
No, what they're
And
saying is sometimes it takes difficult decisions because here's the truth. You should know this, and maybe you don't agree with this. It's fine. I'm sorry. I do believe in Tony Stark's mentality, which is the best weapon to have is the one you don't have to use. Is the one that's so powerful. Like they had to fight back on a level you couldn't compete with the Empire's machine. If you wanted to, that you couldn't. It was not possible. There were too many things that had been. The Jedi had been wiped out systematically and unceremoniously. The children were being indoctrinated to now recruit into their stormtrooper situation. It's one of those things where if you're not careful, the evil that better the evil that you can better the evil you know, so to speak. And again, there's many other models like this in terms of how history has worked. I don't know what you would do to sit here and just say, oh, the good guys are going to win out just because is ignorant. It
right, but the problem is that
sacrifice
again,
people
you're
have to
trying
make.
to make you're trying to make the world of laser swords and space wizards realistic. And I'm not interested in that. I want my heroes to be heroes and my villains to be villains. When it comes to Star Wars, if you want realism and dirty and gritty, I'll watch The Expanse for that. I don't want that in.
I never saw it because
Yeah.
I felt like it was too much.
But I'm just saying. So in Star Wars, good with it's like, remember the whole thing with Yoda. I mean, it's like you are either light or dark. There is no, and you make one wrong move and you flip sides. So you got to be absolutely careful. And it was an absolute, yeah, it was an absolutist universe to be sure. But then, of course, by Revenge of the Sith, it's only Sith dealing absolutes, which is one of the worst lines in Star Wars, since that's an absolutist statement in and of itself.
Right.
But
I agree with that.
yeah, but then now we're just kind of getting to, well, the Empire didn't really do anything bad until they were forced, and because the a couple of terrorist groups decided, we need to really provoke the Empire so we can recruit people, and I don't understand how you don't see that as straight up evil.
I feel like the only well, let's let's go to an allegory, not even allegory. Let's go to something that you may understand a little better. God tells a group of people, that's your land. Go into it.
Yes.
I want you to go forward, offer whatever you want. And if they don't accept it, kill them where they stand.
Right.
And then he goes forward and hardens the hearts. Where's evil and good versus good? I feel like there's a semantic argument
Well, but the problem is,
at play overall. What I'm trying to say is, like,
right.
I get it. We all want the fantasy, and I do. I feel like Acolyte craps on the legacy of the Jedi all day.
Right, but the problem is that at this point in Star Wars, unless you're watching the Mandalorian stuff and only the Mandalorian stuff, and I mean, Mandalorian and the Ahsoka series, right?
Right.
And unless that's all you've watched, everything else makes the Jedi into, they're kind of good, but they're just not as bad as the Sith, or it really
Which
is.
I think is stupid.
It's blurring the lines between good and evil
Horribly.
way too much.
I agree with that.
All right, so we better move on, or we're never going to finish.
No, for real. Mandalorian Grogu, we got to see a tiny bit of a trailer.
Yeah.
It was I liked it. What did you think of it?
I liked what they showed. I'm looking forward to seeing Mando again. I don't know that I want it to be a movie. I would rather see a season 4 of Mandalorian.
I feel like the story they've established is too big for a movie. I'm with you. I agree with that.
And
how do you do that?
Right, and honestly, I love Din Djarin. I love his whole relationship with Grogu. I think that the Mandalorian is really the best new Star Wars we've gotten. Period.
Yeah, absolutely.
Since the prequels,
Agreed.
and it's a shame that they're making a movie, which means this is probably the final chapter.
Yeah, well, or they're gonna, because remember they made. I think this is maybe the. And I don't know why they have to, because I thought they buttoned it fine if they were gonna move on to Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan being the, because they keep saying, reiterating, both Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have been quoted as saying it, that the Mandalorian could be any of them who's wearing a helmet. It doesn't have to be. It was Din Djarin because we were telling his story, but it could easily be Bo-Katan's story moving forward for a chapter.
Right, but that's just an excuse to switch the character.
I agree. It's almost like Doctor Who. It's a MacGuffin.
I don't want them to start switching the Mandalorian to someone else. I like Din Djarin, and I love the fact that now he and Baby Yoda are a team. You know,
Right on.
I think that's so cool. You know what I want to see more than anything else is the two of them both fighting together. I want to see Baby Yoda whip out that tiny little lightsaber and go back to back with the Mandalorian holding the dark saber.
His tiny little lightsaber. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I thought it was. I'm with you. I thought it was very cool. I love them. I love the ideas behind that. That the Mandalorian did such. It gave us a Western, the way I'd never expected it. You know, and I thought it was really like down to the spurs. So when he walks, it clings. It's very iconic. It was very iconic. It's got a special place in my heart. It's one of the first series I reviewed on my channel when I first started it a couple years back, and it's. I really do love it. I want to see it. I'm with you though. I think that it would be better served as a movie. Unless there's a purpose, like
you mean as a series
or something. I mean, as a series rather.
Yeah.
And so, we'll see. The other thing that so making the shift, the other thing they did was cover Disney's live stream things that are not specific to a major franchise, whatever. Even though there are kind of mini franchises in themselves. We got to see a couple more clips from Tron, but then more importantly, they made the announcement that. Nine Inch Nails is going to be doing the soundtrack.
Right, because Daft Punk doesn't exist anymore, so they broke up. And although they broke up, amicably, they just decided that they were done.
Agreed.
And so I'm looking forward to there being another Tron movie. I'm not sold on the concept. So as far as what they've told us is that basically this time the programs are coming into the real world. And to me, that sounds like, well, then we're not going to be experiencing the world of Tron, and that's half the fun.
Agreed, and I'm getting that, and I do want to. I think that's the mistake they'll make. I do believe. I don't necessarily know that this was the next evolution. It had to happen. I think the last movie was good. The CGI just wasn't ready for what some of the things.
Actually, I'll disagree on this. I think if you watch that movie in 3D, holy crap!
Really?
Yeah.
I've never seen it 3D. That's awesome.
Oh, man. It was the best use of 3D I've ever seen. Because here's what happened. You're watching all the stuff in the opening scenes, right, when they're in the real world. And it's just it's in 2D. But then once they go into the Tronverse, all of a sudden it becomes 3D. And so they play on the fact that it's all digital and different.
I love that so much.
And seeing the Tron style ships flying around in 3D was just gorgeous.
It was actually. They looked cool, and I wasn't watching in 3D. I can only imagine in 3D.
So, but this Tron Ares, I'll see it. I'm
not a big fan of who's in it.
Yeah, I'm just, I would have. This movie is coming in about 6 years too late.
Agreed. I don't know I don't know that I trust Jared Leto at all, but we'll see what happens. I do know that Jeff Bridges is supposed to be returning as Kevin Flynn, which I find interesting.
Which makes no sense because he died at the end of the last one. So
unless he's unless maybe he's like a recording or a memory file that's like an echo of him or something, like not actually him. So I don't know.
So we'll see. I'll see it, but I'm skeptical.
Right on. I may actually have to go a little sooner than intended because I have a dog here that looks like he may or may not have to go to the bathroom badly.
Oh, that's okay. Let him poop on you.
Yes. Well, luckily I have wood floors, so I can clean up easy. But anyways, so Snow White, the trailer finally dropped. I didn't realize they recast. I thought it was that other actress, but this is clearly a Caucasian woman who was in this trailer.
No, that's the same actress.
I know, but I'm just like blown away by how
Oh.
like they've completely whitewashed her.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
like,
the funny thing
what?
is that they digitally removed and changed the
Yeah.
7 companions into
yeah.
the 7 dwarves again.
Yes, they absolutely did, and it's one of those things I was like,
And-
oh wow, this is what we're doing. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
and granted, they look a little cartoony
very.
because they look exactly like the 7 dwarves did in the original cartoon.
Oh, the one they focused on, who literally is Sleepy or Dopey or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
The one with the ears. I was like, really? Because he literally looks like the guy from Mad Comics.
Yeah. So I think that what happened was all the fallout after her crap that she said about, oh, this Snow White doesn't need a man kind of thing. I think that's
playing her mom, or
Yeah,
not her mom.
the evil queen.
Yes.
And so Gal Gadot she's a good pick for the evil queen. I am, the thing that I'm concerned about is this trailer just an attempt at a bait and switch? Is this still the uber woke Snow White that she was talking about? And they just changed the look of the dwarves, right? Or is this going to be the classic Snow White? I don't know the answer to that.
This trailer is selling us the classic Snow White, and I believe
Right.
that. I think it's going to be a bait and switch.
Yeah, and so if it is a bait and switch, I'm going to be angry. But I do get the feeling that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And because of the fact that she was so adamant about this Snow White isn't, your grandparents' Snow White, and that movie's so out of date and everything. And the original Snow White is a classic fairy tale.
Agreed.
And so we'll see what happens. Then go ahead with the other one.
Going onward to the next. So then, of course, they talked about Mufasa the Lion King, which I don't know why it's a
prequel.
It's a prequel, but in animation, we kind of saw Scar's history a little bit. It was it was in the movie about the kid that Scar had. And they reviewed, they talked a bit, we saw bits of his history. I think it's odd that apparently Scar was the rightful king, which tells me that at some point he does something to not stay the rightful king. And so again, I feel like all this, Disney has a desire to completely continue to deconstruct everything. They
need to stop.
They need to stop. I'm with you.
I
don't need to know that Mufasa was originally an orphan who was adopted into a particular pride and blah, 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 blah.
I don't want Mufasa I don't want Scar to be a misunderstood anti-hero. I want him. He's fine as the mustache twirling villain.
Right.
And so this kind of thing, because I think about that one they did with what's her name playing the witch from
Maleficent.
Yeah, Maleficent. So like movies like that, even if the movie is good, like I don't think Maleficent was necessarily a bad movie,
right?
But it craps all over the lore that it's based on.
Agreed.
And I don't want
all
that.
For the purposes of establishing new lore somehow,
right? But to try and make evil is good, good is evil.
Yeah,
right.
I will say this. Right. Apparently, they did learn, and apparently, this version they're supposed to be much more emotive than they were.
Yeah, because I never watched the first one all the way through because I know they made the animals a little too realistic, and so they didn't have any emotions on their faces.
Right.
Which is funny because other people have done realistic animals with emotions before. So yeah, they didn't, I don't know, I think they were just saying, oh, but ours is going to be totally realistic, and that was a mistake.
I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
Why we need totally realistic?
And it's so funny because it's like, this is the live action Lion King. No, it's not. It's just computer generated instead of hand drawn.
Agreed. All right. I really do have to. I have to walk.
There is one more thing you didn't. I don't know why you didn't put it on your list. Avatar.
Oh, because it's a logo. It's a fiery logo.
Yeah.
And apparently
But
so everyone's the big conversation online is what Aboriginal or people mimicry will they like? Who's gonna be
the
mirrored
Ash
here?
people,
Is that what it is?
yeah, they're the Ash people. That's what they said.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And I will say this: I watched uh, today. I watched Avatar 2 for the first time.
Did you?
Yes, just
What'd you
because of
think?
the announcement for Avatar 3, and I knew we were going to talk about it, so I figured, okay, I'll watch Avatar 2. It's on Disney Plus. How bad could it be? And it's 3 hours and 14 minutes long. If it were a 90-minute movie, it would have been awesome.
Well, and they spent the first hour telling you the story of the movie we never got.
Well, but the thing is that it's mostly about kids and bullying and stuff like that. And it's like, no, I want to see the sky people versus the avatars. That's or versus the Navi.
Sure,
That's
sure.
that's the fun stuff. I
Agreed.
don't care about the fact that the fish people and the forest people have a little bit of a bonding issue, and the fish people are picking on the forest people's kids,
Right.
and then they go out and make friends with a whale, and all of a sudden everything's okay. And by the way, it's like, oh no, they don't want unobtainium anymore. Now they want to go whaling because James Cameron's like, hey, what's another politically correct thing we can go after? And so I'm wondering what the next one is going to be. Are they going to find oil on Pandora?
No, that's what the energy is. This, yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. It's
you know,
like it's the core of this whole thing. And again, it's. I mean, I got it. I got it the first time. I'm like, how many more?
Yeah, just
do we
leave
have
it at
to-
unobtainium. As stupid as it is, just be consistent about it.
Yeah.
And you can have the fact that okay, they're trying to colonize now, and that means they're spreading, and that means that they need to recruit the sea people to help them in the fight, and you could have a great movie that way. But
Sure.
instead, we get a 2.5 hour movie about bullying, and then 45 minutes of action.
No, for real. I
And so
like
I think I'm worried that the next movie is going to be the same thing.
when Avatar got to avataring, I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Like when
Well,
it
yeah,
actually started actually showing, like when the like a fight and the whale jumps over them, very
Yeah,
free-willing.
that stuff was all awesome.
Sure.
It was just the 2 hours it took to get there. Oh man, and yes, it was beautiful. I get it, it's beautiful. But they also spent like $500 million making this movie. Now I know they made a profit because
Agreed.
the movie made like $2 billion, but is this a $500 million movie? It's a $500 million cartoon, is what it is. Because 99% of it doesn't even have a human
Well, it's
actor.
like the Lion King. Though I don't know why they have
Yeah.
We have Lion King listed as a live action thing. It's not. It should have been at the head of this thing with animation. It's an animation movie. There's not one real life stitch of anything in that movie.
Right. And by the way, ABJ says Avatar movies are about a cool world. But the problem there is that in the first Avatar movie, you get this huge sense of wonder as Jake discovers and learns of Pandora.
Right.
And so in this movie, they're on the same planet, and now they go to the ocean, and things look a little different. But there's never that sense of wonder that we had from the first film. It wasn't like, wow, look at these incredible fish, or wow, look at these incredible whales, or whatever. It was just like, okay, yeah, there's the whales. I'm going to mind meld with them now, and everything's cool.
I'm gonna
it's like-
mind meld with them.
and I just, yeah, I think
love that.
they needed more sense of wonder, and
Again with this wonder.
they needed to trim down the family WB, crap
Elements.
and just make it so that they get along, and then bring it right into the sky people are showing up.
Yeah, I mean, ABJ said, in my mind, skip the action at the end, and just all you have is a Nat Geo pseudo documentary. The moralism and fight, I don't care. I hear you.
Well, that's the other the problem is that they switch from unobtainium to whale.
Whale brains, the second whatever.
Yeah, whale brain extract that makes that makes it so that you no longer age, and it's like, so everything on Pandora is just magic.
Melphis Guy says it was pretty much Pocahontas in space.
Yeah. Well, the first one was Dances with Wolves.
Oh, there you go.
And it really was. It was literally Dances with Wolves, with a white savior complex. Except then he actually, gets like trans
He gets to really
species.
become one of them.
Yeah, he's trans species, and he literally becomes a blue man.
James Cameron, always ahead of his time.
Yeah. All right, so I know we gotta wrap it up so your dog can.
No, you're good. What sucks is he's going to go
Drop-
outside, do one thing real quick, and I'll be done. And I'm like,
Yeah.
terrible. What's funny is now it's not Danny, it's my dog.
Yeah. Well, you should name your dog Danny.
The potty break.
But besides, we covered everything. So
We actually did. So I mean,
yeah.
and nobody's really brought anything up in the. That's all. There was a Power Ranger discussion that I thought was interesting.
Oh, Tom says, "What about Toy Story 5?" That was another one that's just a logo, and honestly, don't care. As far as I'm concerned, Toy Story ended at 3.
Well, the thing is, I agree, but then I saw 4, and 4 wasn't bad.
4 wasn't bad, but it was still unnecessary.
Technically, they've all been.
I know every movie is technically unnecessary.
No, but I hear you.
What I'm saying is, like, the story wrapped up so nicely in 3.
It did. It really did.
So that makes 4 redundant at best. Because, and so now that you're doing 5, and so what's stopped them from doing 6, 7,
my whole
8?
thing is that I'm like, as people who are actual collectors, like you and I are, like, where do we go with this next? We already saw the nerd collector guy who was trying to steal Woody and them and his sister or whatever else, and so now how much further can we go down this particular road?
Right.
Like, what more is there to mine in this story? Just curious.
Alien invades. The toys have to save humanity.
That's awesome. Or you go full Pinocchio and somehow they magically become actual people.
Yeah. Or so aliens, here's what we do. Aliens attack. They release a biological weapon that kills all the people. Like, everybody's dead in like the first 20 minutes of the film.
God.
And then so the toys decide to mount a counteroffensive to avenge humanity.
Oh, see, I thought you were going to go somewhere different.
And so the toys, most of the toys are killed, but they do fend off the aliens. And the few toys that survive are cars.
Bro, don't do it. Oh, boyfriend know-it-all loves cars. That's my daughter's boyfriend.
And so that's how you link the two, is that
100%.
Yeah.
Then you do the whole. See, I thought you were going like aliens find it and then alien children, and now it's the toys.
No. The toys actually. Yeah.
What are we doing? And the one toy that they don't like is Buzz Lightyear. Be awesome.
No, it said so. Now this is how we set up the universe of Cars.
I agree.
And then we do a Cars prequel movie with Lightning McQueen's great grandfather or something. Chicow.
Let's go. Oh my God! Woody and Company versus Japanese toys. ABJ says
Woody and Company would get their butts kicked by any Japanese toy. Shogun Warriors. Oh
Gundam?
man,
Heck, a Gundam War, just like a thing. All right.
Well, Shogun Warriors predates the Gundam Warriors.
Oh my God! Thank you guys so much for being patient with me. I'm sorry. Real quick, where can everybody find and track you down during the rest of the week, sir?
Well, here obviously, and I'm on X, and that's pretty much it right now. Although I'm thinking about trying to expand my social media horizons, but I suck at that kind of thing.
Right on.
I really suck at that kind of thing. So I'm probably going to just stick with this in X. And so I do a interesting. We're doing a Bible study on Monday through Thursday on this channel. If you're interested in that kind of thing, we do this show on Wednesday and Saturday, and then on Sunday morning, we just argue about God. That's always fun.
That's great. That sounds like dinner on Thanksgiving.
Yes.
No, a real quick question was asked, Mr. Know-It-All, how do you think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. goes with the MCU? I think it is the TVA has destroyed it. I think it was a Nexus moment, and they destroyed it. All right, guys. I have absolutely got to go. This dog is whining at the door. And
the dog is literally, the poop is crowning.
It is. So. Appreciate you guys, each and every one of you. We'll talk again next week, right?
Well, no,
what are we doing
Saturday.
Next week? What are we talking about this week?
Saturday?
Yeah. Do we have it come up with it yet?
We talked about doing Crisis on Infinite Earths, but I haven't seen part 3 yet. So
Watch part 3. We'll do that. And I'll bring the comic book knowledge along with the movie with my judgments, because I have lots of the judgment on this. Actually, you know what we should do? We should do a Crisis on Infinite Earths and compare all the versions of it: the CW version, the animated version that just happened, and the comic version, the original one. I'm coming, buddy. I'm coming right now. Let's go. All right.
you gonna end the show?
I guess.